Thanks, Apoor. Hello, everyone. I'm Sumit Khanna, and I head the marketing solutions business for southern region in India. Glad to have Apoor again with us this year, second time around. As a lot of you would know, Apoor heads brand and digital for HCL Technologies, a $6.8 billion company. In addition to brand and digital, Apoor does a lot of other stuff at HCL, employer branding, employee marketing, proposition development, and he just doesn't stop there. He's a very renowned columnist. His articles are published in various industry publications. He also speaks at various conferences and events. He teaches at Indian Institute of Mass Communications. He at Great Lakes Institute of Management. In fact, he teaches a full credit course of digital marketing at IIMC. And to top it all, I'm really glad to announce this, but he's coming up with his first book, and that book is going to be around social selling, which we're going to talk about today. Thank you, Apoor, for being on stage with us today.
Thank you, and it's great to be back in front of you.
So getting to our session on social selling, I'll just introduce the concept a little bit before we kick off and start talking to Apurva. We as modern marketeers understand that the role of the buyer or the purchaser, especially in the B2B world, has changed from a passive consumer to a seeker of information, information about our brands, our products, our services, across various media and channels. A brand's presence today on social media is its introduction to a massive 81% of potential clients. Through this digital presence, sales can prospect leads and nurture. However, it is the marketing professional who is at the forefront of driving this initial contact through ever more relevant content and reaching out to the right stakeholders. Keeping this in mind, sales and marketing need to ask themselves, how relevant is our brand presence across social media channels? How representable we are? How presentable are we across these channels? How coherent is our messaging across these various social media channels so that we can drive business impact? Which brings me to social selling. Social selling has many definitions, but just to keep it really, really simple, social selling is all about leveraging your professional social network to find the right prospects and to build deeper relationships with these people to achieve your sales goals. It's as simple as that. Keeping that in mind, Apurva, let's start off.
Sure.
Do you think social selling is a fad or?
Yeah, it's a very interesting question. Is social selling a fad? I don't know about a fad, but it's definitely an oxymoron. All kind of selling is social. So my take on it is selling has always been social. What has really changed is with the proliferation of internet, social media platforms, the selling process has become non-linear. What it does is it allows you to actually find prospects online, talk to your customers, listen to them, offer very insightful, bite-sized, nugget-sized content, and be there when they need you and when they want to make decisions. One caveat is don't do on social what you would not do in real life. So just because it is social, it doesn't give you the license to stalk prospects, be very pushy. And the other interesting point is listening is the new prospecting. So for those of you who've done sales, there was a lot of focus on getting out of the office, making cold calls, sending emails, then calling up people who opened the emails, and now listening is the new prospecting. So if you're listening well using LinkedIn, HubSpot, Twitter, you can actually reach out to buyers and prospects at an appropriate time.
Any personal experience, Apurva? How did you come across that social selling is important and you should internalize it within HCL?
Yeah, so in my previous role, I was the head of sales excellence for HCL. And one interesting data point which struck me in IT and B2B overall is across industries, 70 to 75% of sales guys don't meet their quota. It's a shocking but true statistic. And even if you're 99 out of 100, I take it as not meeting a quota. So if 70% of sales guys are not meeting their quota, and all marketing guys are getting promoted, doing well, where is the gap, right? It's a very interesting gap. And there's always a chasm which marketing wants to cross. So it led me to thinking about what really makes a successful sales management model. And I created what I call the 3V, 2E model. So successful sales management depends on value. How do you increase the average size of deals? Volume. How do you increase the number of opportunities in the funnel? Velocity. How do you decrease the time to close? Efficiency, which is how do you reduce the cost of sales? And effectiveness, which is how do you increase your bid to win? So simple way to remember is 3 V's and 2 E's. And what I realized is marketers do the same thing and then expect different results. So they continue doing events, they continue running inside sales campaigns, and then they expect different results, which wasn't happening. And which led me to research and start figuring out what is changing in the world of sales. I spoke to some very influential people, Brent Adamson, who wrote the book Challenger Sales, and many other sales thought leaders on what is really changing in the world of sales. And this new ecosystem was coming up. LinkedIn I have always found very powerful, and that led me to start experimenting. I was a first-time author, so I'll narrate an interesting anecdote. I was a first-time author who wanted a top publisher to publish the book. So I said, I wanted to write on social selling. So I said, let's dog food the own medicine. And if I can't social sell, then I have no credibility to actually speak on social selling, implement social selling. So I started looking at publishers and editors on LinkedIn and figured out that Random House, Bloomsbury are top publishers. And I actually did a lot of listening to figure out what kind of books are getting published, what kind of content is working, and the complete sales process, if I may call it, from pitching the idea to the book to actually closing the deal, for me, completely happened on LinkedIn. So which was very interesting.
Fantastic. So from your personal experience and evangelizing this to HCL, how did you think about what were HCL's objectives going into social selling? And what was the marketer's role? Because it's a sales-driven strategy. How does marketing influence this entire social selling in today's day and age? And what were some of the HCL objectives that you went?
It's a very good question, actually. So if I go back 10 years ago, sales was always about ABC. Always be closing. It was all about closing deals, one after other. It's actually become always be connecting now. Which means if you're connecting, if you know enough people, if you're listening, if you're sharing content which is likable, useful, there is a very good chance that your next opportunity, your next job, your next lead, everything could happen on a social network. And marketing, of course, plays a very important role. So when we started our social selling journey, which I started evangelizing inside the company, I realized that I had to spread a lot of awareness and actually get people excited about it. So we started with 4 objectives. First was, how do we increase our penetration in Fortune 500? So we work with about 150 Fortune 500 customers, and I wanted to make sure that we increase our penetration in it. Second was to position HCL as a thought leader. We don't believe in selling on price. So we believe in selling on value, thought leadership. Third was, how do we extend beyond IT and start selling to CFOs, CMOs, chief digital officers, who were becoming increasingly important in the new world. And fourth was, of course, to ensure that the funnel for our top sales guys is well stocked. So we started with these 4 objectives, and research showed that there is no framework for enterprise social selling. So there are a lot of books, blogs, which talk about how to do social selling.
Yeah.
And a lot of them often confuse social selling with social media marketing, which is how to post on LinkedIn, how to tweet, pretty much beginner stuff. And which led to an insight that there really doesn't exist a framework for doing enterprise social selling. And we created a framework which basically defined social selling into pre-launch, launch, and post-launch phase, we went about defining very tight KPIs, ensuring that the content follows HCL's social media policies. If you get it wrong and your sales guys or if your marketing guys end up sharing content which is either confidential or which is client's IP, you could be in serious trouble. So we created a very tight social media guideline. We had to get sales guys excited. Often what happens in sales is the importance loses precedence over the immediate. If there is a deal going on, a sales guy is very deal focused. He would not really want to take his eyes off the deal and do something which will help him in medium or long term. Yeah. His way of thinking is in the long term, we are all dead. So he can't be bothered with the long term. So he's very, very focused on the deal. So we had to spread a lot of awareness and generate excitement. So we did a pilot and we started with Australia, New Zealand. Quiet territory. If the pilot didn't go off well, hopefully nobody would know about it. And it did very, very well. And then we started creating heroes out of sales guys who leverage social selling well. And we started broadcasting it in sales communication, in meetings, in the leadership review calls. And we started getting them to narrate stories on how if they launched, and we created change champions out of that. The second phase was the launch phase, where we actually created training frameworks, and we looked at the right reference architecture on which product should we go for. Yeah. Social selling cannot be done manually over Excel sheets, very inefficient. So after evaluation and doing a very thorough financial analysis, we arrived at LinkedIn and HubSpot as the primary products and Twitter as a secondary product to do social selling. We created a business case, and post-launch was critical, where marketing played a role end-to-end. So once we finalized the vendor, a content marketing vendor, we had to make sure that the sales guys got content which was relevant to their verticals, service lines, and they got it on a weekly periodicity. So all they had to do is, at the click of a button, push the content out. Even that, I can tell you, at times was a struggle, as it happens. But it caught on, and it's become a very widespread movement. We acquired more than 500 licenses to start with for Sales Navigator, and we did a complete end-to-end enterprise-wide rollout. It's connected to Eloqua, which is our marketing automation system. It's connected to Salesforce, which is our Salesforce system. So the reference architecture from a technology perspective is completely end-to-end. There is an enterprise data warehouse which sits at the bottom of this.
Just dig a little deeper with the Sales Navigator, the solution that you acquired, adopted with LinkedIn, and walk us through how did marketing lead this entire initiative along with sales at HCL? Yeah. Some of the wins that you would have got out of it, and what was the experience like?
Yeah. So we have field marketing, and then we, of course, have corporate strategic marketing. We made sure that the field marketing managers who are assigned by verticals or horizontals are very closely involved with the initiative. We wanted sales to be very early on a part of the decision-making process. Anytime social selling comes across as a corporate initiative, there's a very high probability it will fail. We know what is the track record of CRM implementations. So Gartner says 70% CRM implementations fail. And there was a very real danger that social CRM, social selling will go down the same path. So we involved key sales champions, people who are actually known as quota achievers, quota exceeders in the organization, very early on. And we said the world of selling is changing. Let's work together. And we created a cross-functional team. So the first role of marketing was to get different parts of the organization together and create a cross-functional team. Second was on how do you actually create outstanding content. Yeah. Content marketing and relevant content marketing is the fulcrum of social selling. Yeah. And how do you create content champions and gradually get sales guys into the habit of writing on their own. And third was actually using early success on Sales Navigator to drive implementation. So we used to do newsletters, we gamified the process, and there were KPIs like who's the sales guy who's added most people on LinkedIn? Who's the sales guy who's had maximum number of opens on LinkedIn InMail? It was a completely gamified process. And there was an internal dashboard where the sales guys could see themselves moving up or down. And sales guys are very competitive by nature. So that really helps.
So that's a lot on like you chose a product and a solution in the market. You planned it really well, tied it back to HCL's objectives, created a support infrastructure in terms of internal teams and various stakeholders. How did the attribution look like? Like what did success look like for you in this massive initiative that you took with LinkedIn?
Sure. So we are very clear when we are doing digital marketing or content marketing. When you have to look at the outcomes, it has to be a full funnel outcome. It can't be only top of the funnel or bottom of the funnel or only mid funnel. There is a brand goal which is actually ensuring the IT DMs and the larger IT buying committee become aware of brand HCL. There is a mid funnel goal and there is a bottom of the funnel goal. So it has worked very well for us. And you can see some of the impact mentioned here. So 500 million was the direct attribution. And we could attribute it because we had the technology reference architecture. If you don't have an enterprise data warehouse with a 360-degree view of the customer, it's not going to work. $350 million of one deals. So we also use social selling very, very importantly for deals which are already in the funnel. And often what happens is there is a phase when you have been shortlisted and the client is looking for a reason to down select you even further. And their content marketing, we just heard some of our friends at LinkedIn say that IT DM often sees 5 different content pieces before they make a decision for down selection. So once the deal enters your Salesforce automation system, how do you continue serving and using nurture streams? So LinkedIn has a great product, LLA, which we use for nurturing and retargeting. The second is sales excited about it? Would they recommend this program to another colleague? So our sales reference goals were very, very high. The sales guys were excited about it. They wanted to, we actually started rationing the number of licenses for LinkedIn Sales Navigator. And to drive, desirability, we said everybody is not going to get it. Okay. You first need to do these 5 things to become enabled to get a Sales Navigator license. So that worked really well. The moment you start handing out licenses to all and sundry and it becomes like a freebie, the sales interest wanes. So it was aspirational. And of course, direct 18% increase in social selling index. So LinkedIn has a very good index called social selling index, which they share with customers like us, which shows you how are you doing vis-a-vis other brands for us against IBM, Accenture, whom we compete against. Huge increase in the number of in-mails sent. And it was very interesting. Along with the in-mails, we layered it with the top of the funnel display marketing campaign to aid the sales guys in certain accounts. So we didn't go after all customers. We didn't go after, so it was a very segmented, focused approach. Those were the early results.
So how I understand, and I'm going to ask you your advice to so many marketers in the room and salespeople, is you understood the value of social selling. You created HCL's objectives in terms of what do they want out of social selling. You created a support infrastructure and did your due diligence in terms of the products and solutions which are available out there, and implemented it and created a hype around within the organization. Any other advice around this entire structure, because it's like looks like it's worked beautifully for you at HCL.
Thank you. So I think there are a couple of pieces of advice I would have. First is start small. Show early wins. Use the enterprise social selling framework which we spoke about. And it is very, very important to work on change management. So there are 5 fine KPIs. Follow a structured approach which we spoke about. Use this enterprise social selling framework. Change management is often underestimated, but a critical part to achieving success on social selling. It can't be run as a top-down initiative. Broadcast early wins. And I wish you all the luck. And in case there are any questions, you can always reach out to Sumit, anybody else at LinkedIn or me, and we'll be happy to answer any questions.
Or read your book.
or read my book. I didn't want to plug it, but
which is coming out soon. So thank you, Apurva. This has been really, really enlightening.
Thank you.
Thank you for letting us know. Thank you. How to do this successfully.
Thank you, Mr. Chamaria and Mr. Khanna, for joining us out here. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Edward Bry on stage.